welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotello Esquire, Mike Lano, and returning for a great return engagement here, and that is our former host and host again, Evan Ginzburg. Great to have you back. It's been far too long, and we've missed you on the show. And we wanted to let people know that we're having a kind of special powwow here tonight about how we're going to change the show a little bit and hopefully make it even better for those of you who are fans of the show.
That's right. I was in parts unknown for the past few months. When I lost the Loser Leave Town match, it was like, where do I go? What do I do? But now I'm back.
At least it wasn't a head shave match. You
that's
didn't lose
right.
That,
that's why I'm wearing my ROH cap. So, we were talking before the show that we're going to make some changes. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Mike and myself, for nearly a decade, did a show called Legends Radio. And when we said Legends, it was no exaggeration. We had on Grace Slick, Ray Manzarek, Fred Wesley from James Brown's band, et cetera, so on. I mean, some of the greatest.
Percy Sledge.
Yeah, I mean, everybody. And, including the greatest wrestlers of all time, many of whom are gone now. Roddy Piper and Bruno. And,
Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson was the only radio show he ever did, was our show.
Yeah, Kamala, first radio interview ever.
That was the first time he talked, and he sang. The second time he came back, he sang.
Yeah, so we were saying how there's 1,000,001 wrestling podcasts, and I don't know how many times you need to go over the same meaningless Raw or SmackDown, but there's enough podcasts that do that sort of thing, where we just said, we're 200 years old between the three of us, and we have interest outside of wrestling. So why not do something more eclectic, more diverse? And Javier Oist, the noted wrestling journalist who writes for Pro Wrestling Stories, he was giving us some advice as well, saying, most people don't have the patience to listen for an hour 15 like we've been doing. Especially since I end up saying pretty much the same thing every show, that Vince is going to be in one of Dante's 9 levels of hell after he passes, and WWE is penance for sins. I
think they're giving him 2 levels now.
That's right.
The last few weeks, I think it's extended. He's moving into, he's got some condos in the 2nd level.
That's right. That's right. And how many times am I going to say that WWE is penance for sins I committed in previous lifetimes, their TV? So, so we were talking that we're going to make some big changes, including the title, and we don't have a specific date on it, but this show is going to go through some major revisions, and we hope you like it. And, of course, we'll still talk about wrestling, and I was very impressed with Bryan Danielson and Suzuki the other night. Man, I'll tell you, I gave it 4 1/4 stars. Not everything is quote unquote a 5-star classic, but the heat was 5 stars. It was a damn good match.
But I sent you guys the link. You might have watched it Friday during the buy-in, but it was absolutely charts. That's a true New Japan stiff, potato laden. The first elbow that Suzuki gave Danielson was off the charts that floored Bryan Danielson. It was it was amazing. And I do have to say, Vince, because it was a war that night, Friday Night Wars 2 nights ago, Friday night the 15th, he put on a surprisingly good SmackDown. Seth Rollins is now doing a full-on, it looks like he took all of the Batman Jokers since the first Batman with Jack Nicholson and lumped them all together. So now all he has to do is dye his hair green. But he gave a great promo. Edge gave a great promo. It was a decent tag match, fantastic women's main event. It was a good show, but I love AEW. The CM Punk match with Matt Sydal, I thought was an excellent match, only eclipsed by the stiffest match. Ev, have you seen a stiffer match on American soil? New Japan, that happens all the time, or in Japan proper with the old All Japan. But man, it was something.
Yeah, Suzuki hits Danielson with an elbow shot, and his face actually was cut. There was blood on his face. I don't know if you noticed that. Yeah, it was.
Well, we've always seen from Danielson a 100% effort. He's one of the guys that I know of as a professional that never mails it in. And even when he was wrestling back here in California for some smaller crowds, he still gave it his all. You know, there's few guys that I know of that would
I was the event photographer for King of the Indies. That begat Ring of Honor, Evolve, all the Gabe Sapolsky stuff, etc. But it was the first deal of its kind in Vallejo. 2 nights in 2001, I was Roland Alexander's photographer, and Brian Danielson won that tournament over low key, but he had matches with AJ Styles. I mean, this is when
they were great matches, but I never thought he had the personality to pull off what he's done in the WWE and now into AEW.
He grew in obviously he grew in Japan. He grew in Ring of Honor. Really grew. I mean, Evan saw all those great matches. Didn't he have matches with Nigel? I saw him against in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla have a stiff match with Samoa Joe, Brian Danielson. I enjoy talking to him. This guy's a real student of the biz. And
Brian Danielson against Nigel McGuinness was the Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, Dory Funk Jr., Jack Briscoe level match of the 2000s. I mean, I saw them 4 times live in New York and off the charts. I mean, 4.5 5-star matches.
And I actually managed Nigel McGuinness for a match against Mark Smith.
There you go.
And I got to say, he's one of the consummate professionals in the business. I wouldn't be adverse to seeing Nigel McGuinness maybe have a greater role eventually in AEW if AEW were to bring him in the executive level. I think he could do a lot. I know Ring of Honor doesn't want to let him go, but I eventually see Ring of Honor.
Nigel was WWE for their NXT in England. He's a commentator and he's an agent for WWE there.
I think you're going to see Ring of Honor and AEW get closer together. And I think they're going to start doing more things together because we're seeing this organized competition against the WWE is starting to work. For many years, it was like, forget it. You'll never beat the WWE. The WWE is a monolith and that they're a monopoly. And it's like trying to beat the NFL. But I think we're seeing the cracks in the facade.
Evan remember Pro Wrestling USA, which was Eddie Einhorn's second foray to take on Vince. But the problem was Watts and Jarrett and Crockett. They all couldn't.
The production was terrible. The AWA combined production.
Oh, they are. Ring of Honor's not quite in that forbidden zone, what they're calling that, but it's Impact, it's AEW, it's New Japan, it's NWA Billy Corgan, and a few other groups. Perhaps MLW is supposed to be getting into the swing of things. Even Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and Atlanta, the Dave Marquez thing, they're part of that. So as long as they cooperate, I don't know if it's about beating Vince, but AEW is gaining traction and beating WWE finally in Europe and the Middle East on getting TV, which is the big deal. They still have a long way to go. They're only 2 years old, but what an incredible 2 years for AEW to be at this level with those crowds, the thing they had at the Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York. Ev, I hope you watched that or were able to. They're a phenomena. They really are.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they spend some time on the West Coast. That's maybe Ring of Honor's biggest drawback for me as far as someone in Northern California. I think they've done one show in Northern California in 20 years. Ring of Honor has. And so it would be nice.
That was an ill-fated Cow Palace mess.
Exactly. So it'd be nice for them to start, adding in, especially now that COVID hopefully starts at least receding here in California. It's still a big problem in a lot of other spots, but in California, we're really getting close. In fact, Marin County was listed as a yellow tier county just last week. And so we're in Marin County here. We're getting close to being done with COVID. I'm hoping San Francisco can. I'm hoping Los Angeles can. That might make it more feasible for AEW to try to do some live shows out here. Which I
live in Marin County?
Yeah. Yes.
So
We own the other half of the Golden Gate Bridge. I like to tell everybody in the world that Marin County actually owns the other half. The Golden Gate Bridge doesn't just go off into nothing. There's a county that it actually winds up in, and that's Marin.
So if it gets down to 0 there, I'm going to move in your basement like all the fanboys and just watch wrestling 24/7. And if like intruders come near the house, I could bark. I'll earn my keep.
You truly show that you don't live in California, because no Californians have basements.
Oh, okay.
Because of earthquakes, we don't have basements.
You have my punchline.
Hey, I'm in Orange County now. We have a basement, but I want to play on what Evan we're all talking about in bringing in some other elements, not just pro wrestling, the whole show, which we'll always have wrestling, but music, arts, other sports. I want to ask Ev and Russ if you watched the Tyson Fury boxing match.
Yeah, I did. I watched.
Tell us about that.
I do not like Deontay Wilder because he kept saying he wanted to kill his opponents, and he said that Mark Breland, his former trainer, may have spiked his water, and he fired Breland for throwing in the towel. I mean, just ridiculous stuff. So.
He was an Olympic quality athlete.
Yeah, he's a good guy, Mark Breland. So
it seems like there are more WWE angles in boxing than there are in the WWE right now.
Yeah, so I was very appreciative of the fact that Fury was that Wilder was blocking all of Fury's punches with his face. I thought he did an exceedingly good job. So I thoroughly enjoyed that fight, and it was a great fight because Wilder knocked down Fury twice. Also, I mean, it was a great brawl. I mean, you're not going to mistake these two guys for Ali and Frazier, but it was a back. I mean, Wilder basically. He comes out, and for the first 2 or 3 rounds, he's jabbing, he's boxing, he's trying to improve his skills. But once he got knocked down, he went back to headhunting and trying for the one punch. He went back to what he knows, and Fury basically beat him up. So it was
fight of the year, Ev. That's what they're saying. Fight of the year. What's that? They're saying fight of the year already so far for 2020.
Oh yeah. I mean,
it has to beat out the Holyfield match.
Bo and Holyfield.
I was saying, the level of what they have to overachieve is not that high. The bar is set pretty low.
Holyfield lost against some bum. Actually, no, wasn't it an MMA guy on that stupid Trump?
Oh, no, that was embarrassing. Holyfield, it was horrible to see that.
That's what I'm saying, is that boxing, it seems to me in some ways that boxing sort of is starting back over from the beginning, where they are getting into doing more fights more frequently, and even some of them are not on pay-per-view anymore. They're on other sports networks that you can get without having to pay a subscription for, which was, when we were younger, Ali fought every couple weeks on Wide World of Sports, right?
Yeah, they called it the Bum of the Month Club. Ali fought a lot of tomato cans back then.
But even then, it was staying in touch with the public, and nobody had to pay a dime to see a lot of matches with Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, the closed circuit, the stuff with Frazier, those were all closed circuit. And the very first promotion to do closed circuit was my home base, Los Angeles, LaBelle, for Blassie and Tolis in 1970 and then 71, and the Coliseum show, which was one of the greatest. I was on Busted Open twice 2 weeks ago. They had me on to talk history because Mark Henry was blubbering about, I'm not being super critical, but he was saying Gorgeous George drew in the 50s 50,000 people at the LA Coliseum. And so I was asked to call in. I go, no, that's not true. He wasn't even involved. In fact, the only match or show was 1971 at the LA Coliseum. The thing he was thinking of drew a little over 28,000 for Lou Thez unifying the NWA title with the LA version of it against Baron Michel Leone, which broke all gate and attendance records in the 50s. and and there was no other wrestling at the LA Coliseum proper until like 2 months ago when New Japan had that show. It was not in the LA Coliseum, but at a side venue on the Coliseum property. But that's the second only show. And so then Mark Henry goes, well, the great, and I wish it was true. I'm not criticizing him, but the original Jackie Robinson for black athletes in wrestling, his name escapes me right now, Black Panther Jim Mitchell, he was saying, okay, he drew 50,000 at the LA Coliseum. And I said, well, no, and I've done my research. This was a little later in the show. He didn't draw that. He wasn't ever at the Coliseum, but he was at the Los Angeles promotion in the early 50s, the TV era, but never faced Gorgeous George there. So he was claiming that then that Jim Mitchell faced Gorgeous George. But we do want to send props to Jim Mitchell, and there's an excellent book out by him. Our friend Ev that did the COVID cons, I think he published that book by a noted author that we've had on the show. But the Jim Mitchell life story, he was there doing it before what most of us had thought were the pioneers for that community, that being Bobo Brazil, Sailor Art Thomas, Dory Dixon, Sweet Daddy Siki.
Yeah, no, we talked about famous black wrestlers last week, and always worthy of a tribute. But
I would throw black. I would throw Bearcat right in there. But you notice WWE, if you guys haven't noticed, on Monday for poor Keith Lee, they've thrown the Bearcat name on him. He's Keith Bearcat Lee, and they've only done that. They're doing, this guy was amazing on their NXT brand, and then they bring him up and they F him up like they usually do, and they had him job to Killer Cross and all of this stuff. They can't figure out what to do with this guy, so let's just take an old name from the 50s, 60s, the Bearcat name from Bearcat Wright, and throw that on him. But no explanation as to why he got this name or what a Bearcat is supposed to be in terms of a human form.
And that is one of the things, is that there just is still that big disconnect between the history of what made wrestling great and the connection that today's wrestlers have to that history. And that's one of the things I've always had a problem with.
I want to ask Evan, though, because we lost Reggie Parks, allegedly picking up COVID at the CAC in Vegas, and then like so many others hospitalized and then dying, and no comment whatsoever, no taking blame for them holding that reunion, which was a big mistake. Nearly 4 days inside an antiquated hotel, poor ventilation. You could, all of the Comic Cons, including the biggest one in the world in San Diego, the LA Comic Con, all of them have pushed their events, the indoor lengthy events, to next year. They were using common sense. Oh no, after 3 reschedules, we have to hold it. We've lost all this money-making opportunity. So we lost Reggie Parks, a legend, a total legend in Omaha in the AWA Japan. I was a great friend of his since the mid-'70s, and then he became the premier belt maker. So I wanted to ask Ev, being a fellow historian, your thoughts on Reggie Parks. I mean, this is a tragedy, a guy who up until I just saw him 2 years ago, and he was at the peak of health. The guy was 87 and still, like a Danny Hodge guy. And to lose this guy with a needless, unwarranted, unsafe reunion is disgusting.
I recently worked a wrestling convention, and it was indoors, and I wore a mask for 8 hours. And I'm double vaccinated, and I had COVID, months ago. So if anybody's safe, it's me. And I wore a mask for 8 hours. I'm not taking any chances out there. In New York, we still have 30 people a day dying. So it's still no joke. And I just, whatever your politics are, I really don't care, because viruses don't care if you're liberal, right wing, independent. Viruses don't ask. So I would just tell people to be careful out there. And if I do something indoors, I'm wearing a mask. I went to an outdoor concert where every single person had to be checked for their vax card, and I said, okay, it's outdoors. Everybody's been vaxxed. I was a little more comfortable in that scenario. But if I'm indoors, I'm masking up, boy. And if somebody thinks, oh, this guy's scared, this guy's a coward, you know, better alive than, you know.
I've told people to F themselves many times with that kind of mentality, that stuff. I read, I get the New York Times every single day. It's the best paper on the planet. I've always gotten it for decades and decades. And they've had, somebody wrote in the letters column, which is always usually the first place I go to, said that all of these non-believers or whatever, I think we should all ship them to Florida, annex that state, let them do whatever they want there. All the people who refuse to mask, refuse to vaccinate, whatever.
I'm for Bugs Bunny's solution, which was to take a saw and just cut through the state and send it on off to Cuba. I have no problem with Florida going on.
I'm not picking on Florida because it's a fun state.
I
used
am.
to Vero Beach for, I hate to say it, but this was before I moved to Northern California. I would go there every year for the Dodgers training at Baseball Town, Dodger Town. And it was great fun. I mean, I got to see Don Drysdale, Sandy Koufax, all of these legends. And there was legends from other teams and stuff. But Russ, we should probably ask you briefly. I'm very bummed, 40 years in the Bay Area, loved the Giants. I'd kind of moved from the Dodgers to the Giants, and I was rooting for them against the Dodgers. And now I don't care who wins Atlanta. I definitely don't want to see Houston, the Cheaters, in a series. With the Dodgers, that would be despicable.
Yeah, well, we already had that a couple of years ago, and how did that all turn out?
The Dodgers got screwed there. That was disgusting.
Yeah, well, and like it is kind of interesting to me that wrestling doesn't have any big controversies right now, but every other sport seems to have them right now, has all the WWE drama in all the other sports. Of course, everyone is talking about was the last check swing, last swing, an actual check swing, and were the strikes and the balls done correctly, and a lot of this superfluous drama rather than exactly what was going on the field. So it seems that other sports are borrowing from wrestling.
What about the NBA, Evan? What about Kyrie Irving? And
that's a huge
Jesus,
deal.
what the hell's going on with that in that case? He also believes the world is flat.
I'm from Brooklyn originally, as you could tell by my accent, and this Irving's making all kinds of money, millions upon millions of dollars, and he doesn't want to take the vaccine. So previously he was throwing out the Earth is flat nonsense. This is not the guy you want to get your science or biology tips from.
We almost had the same thing happen here in the Bay Area with Andrew Wiggins, who was, taking a stand and tried to use a religious exemption. And I don't know what religion says you're allowed to get sick and infect other people, but that's a religion I don't want to be a part of.
No, that's all shit. I think the government has issued a statement that they're pretty much going to look down upon using these religion, because a lot of people are lying, and they've been caught, politicians lying and saying, oh yeah, I use that excuse, religious freedom or whatever. No, that's bullshit in the face of a pandemic that's killing people globally.
But on page 37 of the Bible, it says, do not take the vaccine.
Yes, thou shalt not.
Yeah, thou shalt not take
the
vaccine.
These people in school took all the polio, the chicken pox, the varicella, 8 or 9 we all ran through, that we all had as kids. You just did it.
And if it kills me in 40 years, if it kills you, Evan, in 40 years, you'll take it. You'll take those odds.
My body, this is people that eat shit and drink shit and inhale shit. Oh, but I don't want to put this in my body. They're singling out something because Trump politicized it originally. So Trump is the asshole who started all of this. So.
Now, I do eat shit and I do drink shit and I do inhale shit, but I did take the vaccine, so I did not. Right. I at least did not have hypocritical on that.
The guy with the 3 Frankfurters and the big gulp. He's the guy saying, "I'm not putting that vaccine in my body." Can you imagine?
Well, even a highly tuned athlete like Kyrie Irving, he's not taking a stand for something that means anything. It's what does he want everyone else to just say, you're right, we're not going to take this vaccine and we'll let, quote unquote herd immunity protect us all. Well, you can't get herd immunity until a number of people reach that vaccinated point so that you can have that immunity.
85%. We're below 70% nationally. It's 80 minimum eight. Actually, it's 85% to quote unquote herd immunity. And for the schmucks, not everybody, but I think there's just misinformation. People shouldn't look to the internet. They should actually believe in science, talk to doctors. I should get off of this. But when you get it, that kind of immunity is very short term. So that's why you need the vax. Evan was super sharp, as always, and got vaccinated. But this is a different kettle of fish. This is a super dangerous thing, particularly now this Delta thing. And there's another one, MU, another vet. So we're hearing it may not even be safe until like June, July of next year. It's like, we're all miserable. We want this behind us. I want to get out and see concerts. I was shooting more concerts than wrestling. We all want to do stuff. So
I want to go to god awful indie shows, indie wrestling shows. I just
want to be able to take my kids trick or treating. I'm not even sure if we're going to be able to pull that off in a couple of weeks. I
want to see the ticket sellers who can't afford gear wrestling on bad indie cards. I miss it.
It's true. It's true. And just, I think that's the thing is America, we're not good at denying ourselves. And so I think for a year, people were willing to do that. But I think now that, or at least some people.
Republicans were smart. They have flipped with this Trump thing. So I'm not blaming them, but they do become brainwashed and believing all this stuff. They were never like this. They were the ones that were, anti all of this stuff. Now they're just accepting of cheating, of making bullshit excuses to not serve in the draft. Like you have Shin's, whatever that was, splints that Trump was claiming. I'm not picking solely on him, but all of this stuff they used to stand up for. And, now and a civil discourse and working across the aisle. And now it's none of that. And, Mitch McConnell's another asshole. But I'll
tell you something interesting, though. I'm a Democrat, but I have a lot of Republican friends. And when you get moderates and they actually sit and talk to each other as friends and human beings, they agree on a lot of stuff. They just vote on different things. I mean, it's the crazies on the extreme left and the extreme right, that tear these parties apart. But most people just want, safe schools and safe streets and safe subways and everything else. People just want a decent lifestyle. And, you got nutcases on both ends that.
Oh, sure. Well, on our end, you have all this cancel culture stuff. I've been going online saying Tommy Dreamer is he is the heart and soul of wrestling. He's always been a kind guy. He's the guy, all of his photographers, he would set us up, get us press. I remember how kind he was. He got me front row, at the table to eat and shoot the Terry Funk tribute dinner before the Living Dangerously, the first pay-per-view. So for him, at the end of that dark side, it was ill-advised. Somebody should have been there, maybe his wife.
By the way, Evan, you weren't on the show. We did the show about the plane ride from hell. And did you get a chance to see that Dark Side of the Ring episode?
I did.
Okay, we never got your thoughts on it. So why don't we take a minute or two and find out what your thoughts were on the plane ride from hell episode?
Okay, so assuming the quote unquote allegations are true, had any of the three of us done any of that stuff, we would have been taken off the plane in handcuffs. Okay, so
jail.
In jail, yeah, we would have still been in jail.
They probably would have opened up the door and just pushed us out. We probably would have, been given a parachute, maybe not, and just said, here you go, next exit, you're out. So you're right. You're right about that.
So planes, they don't play. I mean, you can't mess around on an airplane. So these guys were treated in a very different way because they're rich, powerful celebrities. And the idea that Vince was actually on that plane makes it 100 times worse because, I'm sure.
That's been disproved, though. They said people were mixing. There were actually a total of 4 plane rides from hell. This was the worst one, but Vince and Linda, after the fact now, are saying they were not on that flight. And so Jim Ross was stuck with the ominous duty of having to be policeman for all of those,
But the fact that there are 4 plane rides from hell says something right there. There isn't just one plane ride from hell, but there's 4 of them.
Let me ask Evan, though, because I was talking about Tommy Dreamer. Now, he was fine until the very last statement. And then he said something maybe 15, 20 seconds tops. And he, gets immediately yanked indefinitely from Impact. He's yanked from being at least once a week co-host of Busted Open on Sirius XM. Swift punishment. Yet, my thing is, Dave Chappelle, no punishment on the Netflix special. And you can look that one up. And also, Robin Thicke is accused of, groping, nearly raping one, if not 2 of the 3 models on that music video that had all that controversy that he got sued for. And no punishment for him. He is on every week. They've not even addressed it on Masked Singer. He's on every Wednesday night on that Fox TV show. So it's time, whatever. Tommy Dreamer suffered enough. I have already emailed him. God, I groaned when you said that. You should have had some people there, an attorney or Teresa Beulah, maybe policing and saying, hey, and then the 2 producers of the show, I've supplied photos since season 1. They should have said, Tommy, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, are you comfortable with us putting that on? They should have looked out for him because they must have known that statement would get him in a shitload of trouble. So I want to find out what Evan thought of that overall. But you had Scott Hall and Flair, allegedly the worst, and then Dustin and what's his face, Brock Lesnar, also crappy misbehaviors.
Well, honestly, I think what happens when your entire life is devoted to professional wrestling, and that's pretty much all you know, you're looking at the world through a skewered view, and those are just the boys, whereas wrestling is part of my life, and I'm an educator, I'm a filmmaker, I'm not just a wrestling person. So I go, you can't pull your schlong out on an airplane. I'm looking at it like a normal person. You know what I'm saying? So I love Tommy Dreamer, and of all the people to get, punished, there's plenty of people. I mean, they had 22 women accusing Trump, and nothing came of that. I mean, so if you're rich and powerful, and the right people are looking out for you, you could pretty much say or do anything. And if you're not, Tommy Dreamer is. He is who he is, and on the level that he is, and we love and respect him. But what he said shouldn't have been said. I mean, you can't excuse what he said, but
do you think, Ev and Russ, that now people seeing how much trouble, particularly him, just saying something, he didn't participate? He's always been an angel up until this. I don't know him fully, but people, I think wrestlers are going to have a second thought about participating in these dark sides now if there's going to be, further seasons.
Well, let me just say something in general. I keep hearing these liberals and their cancel culture. That's not absolutely true either, because true liberals are anti-censorship, and we think artists should be allowed to say and do what they want. And if they say and do something ridiculous, they'll reap the consequences. But, throwing Dave Chappelle off of Netflix, I don't see it. I mean, let him.
I don't want that either. That's his opinion, and maybe throw a disclaimer up or something like that. But this cancel culture stuff, Bill Maher has really been on a rant about it. And he's as liberal as they get, and he hates it.
Yeah.
Comics afraid to say stuff at shows. You have to think about, come on, Lenny Bruce and Pryor and Carlin, they didn't give a shit. They said it, and it came from their hearts and their brains, and we've lost that.
I was sitting with a teacher friend of mine and her college-age daughter, and we were seated with a noted avant-garde jazz musician. And we were talking about censorship. And on the college level, I have friends who are, professional stand-up comedians, and they tour colleges. And I don't know, people are aware, there's a huge contract before they do the gig, what they can and can't say, and the college has the right, mid-set, to pull the plug on them. To pull the plug. You're doing a 40-minute set, 20 minutes in, they pull the plug. If you say something that they're not okay with. And what I found interesting about the conversation, the daughter was saying, well, why would you hurt anybody? Why would you do a fat joke or whatever? And I said, sometimes it's just a joke. Sometimes it's not political. I said, I lost 40 people, 40 family members in the Holocaust. I'm sitting at a Gilbert Gottfried show, and he's doing a whole thing on the Holocaust. And it was so over the top, in character. It was hilarious. We were laughing so hard we were crying. You can't just say you can't talk about this subject. It's taboo. I have friends, black comedians, who have done slavery jokes. You can't just say you can't talk about a subject. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do a 9/11 joke on 9/12. I think the audience isn't going to react well.
Gilbert did with that tsunami thing, and he paid the price, which I thought was unfair then. He's a comedian. He's supposed to say stuff and cheer us up when horrific things happen. And he did
But the thing is, Gilbert Gottfried is like a wrestling character. It's not him being political. He's doing shtick. It's obvious. It's shtick, And I'm just anti-censorship. And I have friends who have written political books. I mean, authors. And they say, let people say stupid shit. Let them say it publicly. Let you know who the enemy is. You don't just censor him and get rid of him.
But let me devil's advocate the other side, which is we've had so much of this fake news stuff that was pushed by Trump and the right wing that we can see the danger that happens when someone is allowed to just perpetuate a complete lie and push it forwards and forwards and forwards and forwards. You have guys like Steve Bannon and Breitbart and things that are under the auspices of being real news, but instead they're totally fake. QAnon and all the rumors that they push, all those idiots that were there on January 6th that thought that they were being pushed by Trump to have their own little revolution. These people start making their own news up. And there is a danger to that when people are able to push falsehoods as truths.
Yes, but the part you're missing is the voting machine companies are suing these guys for billions of dollars. So again, if you say stuff that's not true, if you say stuff that can hurt a company, you can reap the repercussions of it. So,
but not if you slander an entire group. That's what, it's if you have the audacity to piss off a company, yeah, you'll get sued. But if you say something against, black people in a Trump rally, no, that's something that they'll admire you for. So it depends who you target. You can't target Disney, for God's sakes. They've got the lawyers that will sue you to kingdom come. But if you say something about Puerto Ricans, then the 30% of the audience
That's the thing that Trump said before the election of 2016 was, Mexico. I'm not even going to repeat it. It was so despicable, not sending us their best. It was the most ridiculous bullshit crap we'd seen from him to that point, and then it would become, daily. What's going to come out of his mouth daily?
40% of the audience ate it up with a spoon and loved it.
But the other tactic that he used, I don't know where he got this, because he's so stupid he couldn't have come up with it himself, but using this generalistic stuff where many people are saying XYZ, and that should be, everybody should say immediately, their bullshit detector should go on whenever he said that stuff, which was almost daily. Where on earth did he get that? Because that's now a whole tactic by all of his underlings. The lady in Georgia that's crazy, that idiot, some of the idiots in Florida. where did that come from? I mean, Trump didn't appear to be like this in the 80s. He wasn't this over-the-top.
Self-authentication of your own quotes is something the Republicans have been doing since the George W. Bush era, where you don't need to actually have an authority to just say, I heard it somewhere, and I read it on the internet, and people are saying, and I heard this, and I heard that. That suddenly becomes a self-authenticating authority, and it never was before, but it is now. I guess you folks don't have much to say about that because that's what we've been seeing happening. And that's one of the reasons why I left one of the right-wing debate groups, the left versus right-wing debate groups, because the right-wingers were always just doing that. This lady was saying, many people have gotten heart attacks from getting the vaccine. And I was saying, can you give me one instance of somebody having a heart attack from this? Let's see the numbers, not just many people. Show me even one person. And weeks went by, and the person never gave any statistical information on that.
First of all, people believe what they want to believe, and Trump himself said, I could go shoot somebody in Times Square and get away with it. You know, they believe what they want to believe, and they make heroes. I see all these people championing Kyrie Irving, because he doesn't want to take the vaccine. He's a hero. History is going to look kindly on him. I'm going, no, he's going to squander his career and massive salary, and the guy's on the wrong side of history.
He's losing. It's either 345 or 365,000 a game that he sits out. And now the Nets aren't going to play him even there. So away games, he was going to lose out, but now I think he's blown the whole season. So how many millions? They said something like 30 million or something like that.
He was making like 40 million. That's like Buddy Sotello money.
And speaking of political correctness, we also have the whole story of John Gruden coming out this week, which we haven't brought up. And, that's political correctness on the other side, where it's actually doing the job.
After year 2 of 8 years of these emails, why didn't they come out and denounce him or push him out? Why, if they monitored him for 8 years and you saw the stuff from day one, from Chucky, I don't think that's what our nickname was for him, because he looked like the evil killing machine doll. That was his nickname for years. Now people think they're slandering the doll when they when they compare him to Chucky. They're like, don't be mean to the doll, to the demonic doll. 15 years. So, what a moron. And, anybody like him has got to go.
You want to know something? I don't quite understand why people are shocked when jocks say stupid stuff. I mean, a lot of these guys, and I don't want to make a blanket statement because I know many athletes who are very intelligent.
Talking, Evan.
Huh?
People are saying, Evan.
But Gruden isn't an athlete. I mean, he was an announcer. He was someone that knew he was, being looked at by the public. He was, on the air for what he had to say. So it wasn't just what he did on the field as a coach.
But I'm just saying, sports people are on occasion going to say something sexist, racist, homophobic, etc. And they are who they are. It is what it is. They could do the
how many of them bypassed all of the important classes, as we saw time and time again? And it didn't matter what grades they got. The emphasis, the scholarships went on. If they could deliver athletically, they could have somebody take their classes. That went on for years until that scandal was exposed. So maybe they didn't learn those social graces and didn't, achieve brain power. It was just the physicality power.
And I'm not excusing it. Don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is cancel culture is dangerous because innocent people will get caught up on it. For example,
Tommy Dreamer is a good example of that.
As creepy as Woody Allen marrying his stepdaughter is, his other kids are saying that Woody is innocent. There's been multiple pieces in reputable media saying that Woody is innocent. So if there's no trial, basically you're being judged by the public. And, All I'm saying is, caught up in all of this mess, there's going to be a lot of idiots who you can live without, but there are going to be legitimate artists who are going to get, destroyed by this thing. And
Eric Clapton has been he's getting destroyed big time because he came out against masks.
But he is an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's we're kind of caught in this juxtaposition where you have the previous, like the 80s and 90s, people like ourselves that grew up or became adults in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, where the culture was very different and what you could get away with was so different. The Richard Pryors of the world and Eddie Murphy. You look at what he did during his Delirious.
But Van Morrison and Eric Clapton, they were hippie type guys. They were very liberal. So why have they pulled a Dennis Miller and now all of a sudden out of the blue they're spewing conservative bullshit?
It's maybe not even conservative bullshit. It's more this maybe like built-in fear of vaccines and government involvement and believing the wrong things, as I said, kind of brings us back, which is that, people have been so allowed to, with free speech, to lie about things. Free speech is sort of given a carte blanche for people who have no authority and no idea what they're talking about to spread rumors and lies as if they were truth. And because people see it on the internet, they just flat out believe it. There's just...
Well, you're talking about Fox News there, Russ.
I'm talking about the internet in general. It's not just Fox. Fox helps
you're describing Fox News, even though you're talking
the
about
other thing. The other thing is you're at this weird point in history where you can select the news and media that you want to hear. So basically, if I'm watching, let's say, CNN, and there's a quote unquote peaceful protest, and during this peaceful protest, there's fires burning. They're tearing down fences. They're screaming. They're cursing. They're hurling garbage. But the announcers are spinning it as a peaceful protest. As a viewer, I could say that doesn't look peaceful to me. That's not what I'm seeing. But my point is, you can select. I'm going to just watch CNN and MSNBC and left wing, and the other guys could say, I'm only going to watch Fox News and the right wing channels, and you're getting two different news stories and two different takes, and you're not going to hear the other side. You're just not going to hear it. You're living in your own news bubble on both sides.
Yeah,
no, it's dangerous as far as the fact that
LA Dodgers 4, Atlanta Braves 3.
I thought that was Bull Ramos and Mil Mascaras. I guess I was wrong. Yeah.
You whispered
my
it.
shot behind me.
Yeah.
1969.
I just want to say that I'm not an action figure person, and one of the few action figures I have is of Jimmy Lennon. I swear to God, I love Jimmy.
An action figure, Jimmy? Where'd you get that?
That's from one of the Rocky movies. They put out a Jimmy Lennon doll.
Really?
Yeah. You want me to put it up? You want me to put it on camera?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll be back in a second.
Yeah. Wow. Jimmy Lennon Sr., Russ, greatest wrestling ring announcer ever. And I know my friend Howard Finkel. No.
Alan Bolte.
Howard Finkel, way up there, but Jimmy Lennon Sr., greatest ring announcer. Ed, would you agree?
Wow.
Can
well,
you
I
send
think Michael Buffer might be able to.
He might. Yeah, he's up there. But Jimmy Lennon Sr., I think, in my mind, it's just my opinion. Many others, though, boxing and wrestling, because he announced both. He went to great lengths to study Japanese and Spanish as I have, but he would go in the back and ask them, and he would get the pronunciation perfectly. Jimmy Lennon Sr., to my mind, Ev, I think the greatest ring announcer for boxing wrestling ever.
Oh, yeah.
Finkel
I used to watch the boxing from the Olympic also. He was great.
I'm going to give a shout out to Mark Barrow. I don't know if he's still around, but Mark Barrow was one of the first announcers for BattleBots, and I had a chance to meet him early in his career about 20 years ago, and he was a super nice guy. So I'm just going to throw Mark Barrow's name out there.
That's probably Johnny Red Shoes Dugan back there also, right?
Yeah, we had some great referees who would go and do side gigs. Johnny Dugan would go into New Japan, Hank Matheny and Jerry Murdoch would go in and work for Baba at All Japan in the 70s. But Red Shoes Dugan was the most famous transplant. Obviously, you guys had Dick Worley and Dick Kroll from the Tri-WF, WWF. They were world famous too, but I think Red Shoes Dugan is a global ref, and now you have a New Japan referee who was such a mark for Red Shoes. That's what his nickname is Red Shoes.
Yeah, I've seen him. Yeah.
So, I want to put this out there. Wait, Russ.
Okay.
Because we're going to be jumping and having short, brief topics in the future as we actually chop the show into halves, so it's a shorter, news-laden thing. But from Heels, I'm working on Luke Hawx, and then the guy that played the lead heel, the brother character of the Starz TV show Heels, that just had its finale for season 1 last week.
No spoilers.
No, I'm not spoiling it, but the guy who played...
I'm going to binge watch it.
The blonde brother. I didn't know he's been a Georgia indie wrestler for 10 years. Luke Hawx, a wrestler for way longer than that, probably 25 years, but he's been involved in film since 2006 and stunt work. I thought that show was terrific. Ev, did you watch any of Heels?
I haven't seen it yet, but I saw Halloween Kills, which was stultifying, awful.
Really?
Awful.
Other than the first Halloween, they're all terrible.
At the gate this weekend.
Other than
I saw Cry Macho with Clint Eastwood. That I enjoyed.
But not the Halloween. I'm sad to hear that with Jamie Lee Curtis.
It was gratuitous violence for the sake of violence. No matter what you do to Michael, he just gets back up. It's like the Undertaker cartoonish already. There's no suspense. I mean, you hit him in the head with bricks, he just shakes it off. He's Superman now. It's ridiculous.
You know what I saw? I never watched it all the way through because it's a long movie. Son of Frankenstein, which is the third and last appearance of Boris Karloff as Frankenstein. He was in the first one in Bride of Frankenstein. This one where Bela Lugosi played Igor, the assistant. And the guy, the most famous Sherlock Holmes actor, played the son of Dr. Frankenstein.
Basil Rathbone.
Oh, man. This movie was terrific. And
I've seen Son of Frankenstein.
But that reminds me of him, because whatever you did to Frankenstein, how many times was he burned? And, he's in another movie. I think he and Dracula have had more characters play him, from the Britain.
But now they're like 15 Halloween films. So I think that now Michael Myers has taken over the title.
They shoot Michael Myers in the chest like 6 times. He just brushes it off. It's like a cartoon now. It's like.
Where does he get all those William Shatner masks? Because they've been destroyed before. He's got an ample supply of those masks.
Yes, I'm sure now.
He goes down to Mexico where they have the lucha masks, and he picks them up.
You get them from space.
Or a toy mask.
They get them from space. There's a cache of them in orbit, and they just sent William Shatner up there to get more back so they can do more Michael Myers films.
I'd like to see a steel cage match between him and Sulu. Sulu doesn't like him.
No, and they're both in their 90s. So
George Takei is the unofficial announcer of the Howard Stern show. They bring him in every couple of months, and he just goes off. Plus, Howard Stern has a fake, the way they had a fake David Letterman. They have a fake George Takei, and he sounds exactly like George Takei. So he was on all week trashing the Shatner up in space thing. Oh, they should leave him up there, blah, blah, blah. But one thing you have to say, whether William Shatner is a toupee-wearing egotist, is that for 90, that guy is sharp. He seems very sharp to me.
He cut a promo. He said, "I never met Sulu." That's funny. That's a good line.
He did. One thing we have to credit him for is when he at the end of that flight, and he's doing Today's Show and Tonight Show, he was rallying against the Trump folks and saying, he got this greater consciousness going up there for 10 minutes. We have to save this fragile planet. We have to that has to be our number one thing. Besides get rid of COVID, is saving the planet, getting rid of pollution, the oil stuff. We just had a horrific where I'm at Huntington Beach, horrific oil spill, 134,000 gallons.
Plus, he mentioned that. By the way, the world is round. I checked. He said that just for references.
When
I
he
was
was able to see was what other astronauts have said who've been up there longer is they see, maybe a couple of mile high from the Earth, the atmosphere, the biosphere, that has our oxygen that's made by plants or reconverted by plants, and then complete black everywhere else. And he said you can see how fragile it is when you're up there. So, I was happy to see it.
We all get a chance to go into space.
Next, they got to get Elton John up there, the Rocket Man, the guy that sang the rock. If we're going to get people associated with space, get Elton John up there.
And then maybe
I think we should send the McMahon family up there and leave them all.
I was just about to say that. You got it right. Okay, we have a couple minutes left. I just want to find out what you guys are looking forward to in the upcoming weeks. Is there anything that you guys are looking forward to seeing or watching or observing?
I plan on watching the Sopranos movie. I'm a big Sopranos fan.
Big Sopranos fan. Yep, that. I don't know why we can't have some Freddy Krueger movies. I think Robert Englund is just too old. I can't find anybody that can portray him. He's so associated with that role. I wish somebody would do that. I hope there's going to be some better Halloween movies. We only have a couple more weeks.
I saw Nightmare from Elm Street on TV like about a week ago. That has not aged well. The special effects on it are so old. I tried to show it to my daughter, and I was like, trying to convince her this really was scary at the time. Yeah. My daughter's looking at it and she's like, "This is not scary."
I'll tell you what is scary. Scary Children of the Damned, that movie from like '63 from Britain.
With the glowing eyes.
The glowing eyes. Some of that stuff. And people still, Bubba Ray Dudley was talking with him when they did that show last week on Scariest Movies Ever. We all still agree, the top of the list, we can't even watch it or think about it or listen to that Tubular Bells music, The Exorcist. Scariest movie ever, way above everything else. Because
I'm going with The Shining. That is the scariest movie I've ever seen.
That's pretty good.
I saw the first Halloween in the theater in '78. People were jumping out of their chairs.
This is the first time they'd seen something like that. Fast forward 15 films later, not as scary.
Came out the day after Christmas in '73, December 26, 1973. I went with Richard Dawson's sons, my best friends. It was pouring rain. We're standing in Westwood by UCLA in the line to get in. We had no idea. I didn't even know what an exorcist was. And people were screaming, running out of the theater. You were all sopping wet. It just added to shaking and oh man, that was some scary back then.
Well, so it's great to have you back on the show, Evan. We really appreciate your contributions, and we are going to start, working maybe next month on modifying up the show. But if fans have any suggestions as to what we could do to make this a more appealing show to you and make it a better show, we'd love for you to post something on our Facebook page or on the YouTube link that we have, and we're really open to your suggestions. So any other last words you guys have this week for our fans?
What we're talking about is breaking the show into two, so having a shorter, quicker show, news-filled, other genres, wrestling plus everything else. Legends Coast to Coast is a possible title you came up with.
Yeah, with some non-wrestling guests, and we could still have Mil Mascaris giving Mike a trim back there. That's what it looks like from this angle. It looks like, yeah.
And if you guys have if fans have any guest suggestions or know anyone they'd like to have us have on the show, we're not limiting ourselves to wrestling anymore. So we're really open to your suggestions and moving the show in a slightly new direction so that we can get the kind of shows that you folks really want to see and watch from us. So
I want to have Trump on the show and ask why he thinks he even deserves to be in the
that would be a long show.
The Hall of Fame. Why he deserves to be in that thing? What did he ever do for wrestling?
Well, I'd give him his own wing, which would be the Hall of Shame, and that'd be on the way to the bathrooms. or maybe in one of the bathrooms in one of the stalls. He would, you know, you could.
Evan, before we let Evan go, do we have any more updates? The name of your book?
Yes.
Everybody should be upcoming. Let's talk about that book first.
Well, the photos are all done, and it's it should be done by the end of the year.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's a 400-page book. It's basically my life's work. It's 100 stories, wrestling rings, blackboards, and movie sets, because that's basically been my my life. You know, different aspects of my life, in the making films like The Wrestler. You know, working in education, working in wrestling in various capacities, and some of the amazing, amazing people I've worked with and, you know, became friends with. And the past 2 years, you know, I lost 6 friends to COVID. And what I'm finding is every time you turn around, it's like the anniversary or the birthday of one of your friends you've lost, right, Mike? It's like
coming up, I've been talking about Georgianne Macropolis.
Yeah.
In about a month, it'll have been 10 years since we lost her. And there was nobody that tied from the upper tiers of WWF, WWE, down to regular fans, the boys. As I said last week on Busted Open, I was there when she would get phone calls, you know, on one of the earliest cell phones from Scott Hall or Shawn Michaels. So that was a great loss to wrestling.
I was for those who don't know, she did a newsletter called the Wrestling Chatterbox Early Newsletter, but also, you know, she connected everybody. If you needed a phone number, if you needed anything. So I was at Georgie's wake in New York, and it was an open casket, and she's holding photos of Bruno Sammartino and Buddy Rogers in each hand. So she went to eternity with, you know, 2 wrestlers. That's how much she loved wrestling. And I've had this discussion with Buddy before. I have a necklace that was given to me by Tiger Khan's mother, and I'll be buried with that. So, you know, I could certainly relate to this. And but, you know, in September, Nikolai died, Johnny Valiant died, my mother died. So, you know, every time you turn around, there's like it's like you're perennially like grieving, you know.
But you never I don't know where I heard this from, but it was somebody said within wrestling, when they stop talking about you or remembering you, that's when you're truly dead. So if we remember Johnny Valiant or anybody we loved, Georgie, etc., Bruno, for me,
Mark Smith for me.
Positively, you know, we're doing something positive. We talk about them on a show or with friends or whatever. Do a tribute.
Well, what I'm starting to realize is, like I write for Pro Wrestling Stories and Pro Wrestling Post, and I look at Pro Wrestling Stories, and, you know, I'll write a piece and it'll be shared in 10,000 places. 10,000 places. No exaggeration. You could see. So, you know, these pieces on people who are gone, you know, will live forever. And, you know, your work will live forever. And I could tell you for a fact, and it's not bragging, 100 years from now, people will be watching The Wrestler. They'll be watching it.
Hopefully people will be watching Legends Coast to Coast when we get it out there. Anyway, folks, that's all that we have time for this week. Thank you so much, Evan, for rejoining us. Really appreciate all your input, and we'll have you on future shows. This is an exciting new direction for us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you, guys.